Account of a Bloody Noble Battle, Chapter 8, First Part. A blast had occurred between the wagon and its reflection on the road not 20 yards ahead. The blinding flash of white light carried enough heat to instantly vaporize the falling rain. It evaporated, the moisture alone, not even singeing anything else. Iriya and Mika were both unharmed, and while the pile of bandages in the driver's seat was steaming, the cloth wasn't charred. The strange heat dart had been hurled by Don J., who'd since given up the ghost. As proof of his confidence in his ability to exact revenge on his foe even on the brink of death, his face wore a rictus that was practically hysterical with mirth. When Dee and Jean arrived on the scene, the wagon carrying Iriya and Mika had halted, along with the horses pulling it. The remnants of the wondrous battle between fire and water still remained. Dee paid no attention to them, climbing instead into the back of the wagon. He immediately put his left hand to Mika's brow, and the hoarse voice informed him, "Nothing out of the ordinary." At the same time, Mika opened his eyes. His hand reached out for Iriya. A drop of water splashed against the back of it. "Kraken," Jean said from the back of her steed, shaking free the bow she wore over her left shoulder. It wasn't the repeating fire kind. Hers was an old-fashioned half-moon bow that fired one shot at a time. Knocking the first arrow, she halted with 4 more sandwiched between the fingers of her left hand. The half-moon bow might not have repeating fire, but it could be shot in a manner so artistic and unholy no crossbow could match it. The silky threads of rain from the artificial storm swiftly became a torrential downpour, covering Mika and Iriya with a waterproof tarp from the wagon. Dee stood tall and looked all around. Jean's breath was taken away. The rain-hazed stand of trees ahead unexpectedly blurred like a watercolor painting, dropped in a puddle, the trees crashing down as if they were pillars of water. Next, a closer tree dissolved, then a second was transformed into water. "Dee, at this rate it's going to get to us too. Dee, at this rate it's going to get us too." Dee didn't respond to Jean's cry. When he saw the 5th tree away from them melt into water, he threw a rough wooden needle into the 4th. An unearthly cry of pain shattered the drowning downpour. The stand of trees remained as it was, and the rainfall concentrated beside it. Shrouded in what almost looked like white smoke, a colossal figure more than 10 feet tall came into focus like an image in India ink. Viscount Kraken. It was unclear whether Jean was cowed by his overwhelming size and his air of malevolence. But on the back of her rearing cyborg horse, she kept her arrow unerringly trained on the giant's heart. Closing his massive hand into a fist and pulling something from the left side of his chest, he hurled it straight at Dee with a grunt. Easily catching the rough wooden needle that had pierced the giant's heart in his left hand, the hunter introduced himself, saying, "I'm Dee, and I have something to ask you." Either he didn't realize he was in no position to be making requests, or he was showing his confidence that his deadly skill could slay the giant where he stood. "Ah," said the voice that fell from 10 feet high, carrying evident surprise. I believe I have heard that name before. You are an exquisite man, I see. Now I can identify. Now I can understand why nobles could be so taken with the sight of you that they're easily cut down. Striking the left side of his chest, he said, You made me experience pain for only the second time in my life. You're a man to be feared. However, if all that skill cannot slay me, then it matters not. See what it is to battle in Kraken's watery hell, and then die. An arrow whined through the air, sinking into the nobleman right between the eyes, seemingly having no effect at all. The arrow came out through the back of his head. Did you imagine an arrow would have any effect on water? The man known as D is special, Viscount Kraken declared in a voice like bubbles bursting. In fact, something foamy was actually spilling from his thick, toad-like lips. It didn't fall to the ground, but rather rose high into the darkness. You know, there's something I've been wondering about for a while now, Jean said in a fashion that was actually rather bold. Isn't water supposed to be taboo for the nobility? Correct, Kraken replied without the least delay. Before I became like this, I was a noble living on dry land, and that was 4.5 millennia ago. However, one spring day a faulty setting on the aircraft. One spring day a faulty setting on the aircraft carrying my wife and daughter caused it to crash in the lakes region. This is the result. Changing the subject, he continued, What do you think are the ways to destroy a noble? The wooden stake driven through the heart, decapitation, burning in fire. All will suffice, and I'll do a splendid job of reducing us to dust. All save drowning. My wife and daughter were ladies who placed more value on their nobility than anyone I know. All their lives it was so. I know not now how many they scolded me for my own lapses. I know not now how many times they scolded me for my own lapses. However, when the two of them were fished from the lake, they were foul swine bloated with all the water they had inhaled. It was then that I swore I would master water. And it took me some 3,700 years to reach this point. A noble who wanted to be a fish. That wouldn't even make a good routine for some comedian out in the sticks. The hoarse voice spat venomously. I, of all people, can solve the riddle of this girl's physiology. Why is it that time and again she has felt the fangs of nobles, yet instead of being made their servant she raises her hand against them? This may very well be a boon to the declining nobility. D. I shall take the girl now. A great splash of water bounced off the waterproof tarp. Focused rain. And look, the tarp, shrouded in grey misty spray, lost its shape and color, and then began to disappear, as if it were dissolving in the water, along with the two figures beneath it. That ain't good, the hoarse voice exclaimed from the hunter's left hand. Dee had just placed it on the tarp. See how that veritable waterfall of rain became a single column of water that was swallowed by the mouth that opened in the palm of the hunter's hand. In the darkness, the mountain of a nobleman gasped. Jean's bowstring twanged twice, sending its projectiles toward his heart. She knew full well the attack was in vain. However, when they pierced the heart of that colossal figure, they became scorching balls of fire. Grr! Kraken, the great sea beast, doubled over. Clutching his chest beneath his hands, it glowed crimson. Just then, fireballs and black smoke gushed from his mouth, nose, and ears, followed shortly by more from his stomach and crotch. Count Langland was good enough to give me these flame arrows. He thought if there was any weapon that could slay Viscount Kraken, this was it. The giant jerked his head back and opened his mouth. Smoke still poured from his mouth like it was a chimney, and his whole body twitched. Dee didn't wait for the smoke to stop. The instant he saw that the rain on the tarp had diminished with the Viscount's spasms, the hunter launched himself into the air. His legs were so powerful, he easily sailed more than 30 feet. Drawing his blade an instant later, and swinging it at a neck as thick as a giant tree trunk, the nobleman's head fell. By the time it passed his chest, it had become a ball of water, devoid of eyes and a nose, and before it hit the ground, it had fallen to droplets. "What the?" Jean exclaimed, pulling tight on the reins as the nobleman's body also turned to water and gushed toward her. Dee was immersed in the weird water up to the waist, though it quickly receded again. "That was easy, wasn't it?" Jean said, but her expression was stiff. It was too easy. There was no way defeating him should have been so simple. Dee went back to the wagon. He wanted to check that the pair under the tarp were okay. Meeker gave him a weak thumbs up. "Dee," Jean called out. His left hand told him why. "We got company." From the way Dee looked up, it was clear he'd been aware of that as well. A stubby aircraft descended without a sound from the same sky that continued pelting them with rain. Coming to rest on the ground a scant 20 yards away. In the sunlight, it would probably have appeared silver. Dee watched as part of the craft opened, and 3 shadowy figures appeared. The one of the 4 glanced up. He stood well above the others as they walked toward the hunter. The lightning flashed. A face appeared from the shadows. "Count Langland," Jean murmured in a tone that carried fear. First part end.